Hi, I'm going to talk to you today about a term called spin loft. And it's a term used in TrackMan, and what it does is it measures the angle between the loft of the club at impact and your attack angle. Now that angle determines backspin and also compression of the ball. So if we have a loft at impact of 31 degrees with a 6-iron and we hit down on the ball 4 degrees, our spin loft is going to increase to 35 degrees. Now that's going to make your 6-iron potentially into a 7-iron, and the ball will generate more backspin and travel shorter. So when you see the tour players who hit 8 irons 200 yards, what they're doing is they're controlling their angle of attack and their loft on the club, and they're primarily de-lofting their clubs. Now typically a 6-iron can come out at around about a 3-wood loft at impact. These guys hit 18 degrees to 20 degrees of dynamic loft at impact, which is very, very low, and with a slight downward strike though, that gap will slightly increase maybe to 24, 25 degrees, and then they're closer to kind of some low number irons like 3 irons, 4 irons. So to compress the ball ultimately is about bringing these angles down to a very, very tight tolerance. If we can get the angle between the attack and the loft at impact at around about 24 degrees, you're going to control your spin rate and hit the ball further. So yes, ball speed, club head speed is a major factor in how far you hit the ball, but also controlling spin rate. So if you want to spin the ball quite a lot, then you need a fairly wide gap. So that means you need to make the loft increase and bring the attack angle down. So we're talking about 4 or 5 degree average of downward strike with an iron. But obviously, if you want to create more backspin, you need to keep the loft up. And if you want to hit the ball with less backspin, you have to bring the loft down. So what I'm trying to talk to you about today is how to really hit the ball much further through controlling spin rate. So all things being equal, if we take a 6-iron and we're trying to deliver a very low backspin to the ball to get lots of distance, then what we need to do is we need to make sure that at impact we're taking nearly half the loft off the club. So for that to happen, we need to make sure at impact and post-impact the hands are leaving the club face. So at the point of impact, the feeling is that as you go through the ball, you want to make sure it's fairly shallow after impact. We don't want the club head lifting up, since that's going to cause a loft increase at impact. Likewise, we don't want to hit very hard down on the ball, because in doing so, and with loft on the club, it's going to obviously make us lose distance. So at the point of impact, as you're coming down, try to get the hands going as far forward as you can through the ball, exiting quite shallow through it so that the club doesn't rise up, and make sure that your downswing plane is not excessively steep, because in doing so you can steepen the angle of attack, and also with less loft on the club you can get these low, very, very low non-climbing balls. So we don't want an excessive downward strike with a low loft, nor do we want a downward strike with a high loft. We're trying to keep them as close together as we can. So if we took that as being a loft at impact with a standard iron, but if we try and de-loft it, we're going to compress that ball more, we're going to hit it further. And that's because we're going to reduce the spin rate on the ball. So to give an example, What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video for a minute and I'm going to show you some data on TrackMan. Okay, so here we have TrackMan data of two players. We've got Justin Rose and Paul McGinley, both using a 6-iron. And if we go through the numbers, we can first of all see that the club head speed is slightly quicker with Justin, a bit slower with Paul. Now, the attack angle with Justin is negative 4.5, so he's hitting quite hard down on the ball, whereas Paul is slightly less on that angle. The loft of Justin is at impact is 20 degrees with a 6-iron, so he's really kind of de-lofting that club. But then when you compare that to Paul McGinley, you can actually see even lower loft than impact, 18.5. So we're looking at sort of forward loft almost there at impact. So he's got less loft. He's also got a slightly lower attack angle. And the result of that then is the spin loft on the club is 20.9 degrees as opposed to Justin at 24.4. So having a lower angle like Paul's got, he's going to create more compression on the ball compared to Justin, who's got a higher spin loft. Now, when the ball leaves the club face, they leave at a similar angle, 13.4, 13.5, so neither one takes off lower or higher. But when we look at the next bit, which is spin rate, look at the difference between the two. You've got 7,816 spin versus 5,906. Now, nearly 2,000 RPM difference with the same club, but because the spin loft is lower, therefore the backspin is lower, and then look at the difference in the distance. Justin 137.3, Paul McGinley 196.3. So you can see here on the animation, you can see just the difference in the ball flight. You can see how the spin rate of 7,800 really pushes the ball up and hits that bank of wall at around about 70 yards through the air. Whereas because the spin rate is lower with Paul's, you can see how it just penetrates through the air and just goes so much further. So with less club head speed, Paul has hit the ball a lot further, has made the ball travel a lot further than Justin, because his spin loft angle between the attack angle and the dynamic loft is much closer, whereas hitting down on the ball, one assumes that by hitting down on the ball we're going to drill it more, and yet actually that's not the case if we've got quite a bit more loft on the club at impact. So controlling spin loft is absolutely vital if you want to control or distance of ball, if you want to hit it further, if you want to hit it shorter, if you want to spin it more. So you need to think about the two together. So this gives you hopefully a few ideas to think of when you're practicing or developing your goal. Try and bring the gap down nice and tight with your clubs if you're looking for more distance, but if you're looking for more backspin around the greens or approach shots onto the greens, then think about steepening the attack angle a fraction more, getting more loft on the club at impact by perhaps putting the ball slightly more forward in the stance or opening the club face, and you'll see how much more distance you can get and how much more backspin you can get as a result of it. Thanks very much for your time.